Hi everyone. So we are back with the third part of the email. We discussed the email architecture in the first video. We discussed about the standard format of MIME and RFC 5322 in the second video. Now it's time to discuss the third most important part of email about the message transfer and how does SMTP does this message transfer. It simply says how does SMTP transfer an email from the source machine to the destination machine. So just let me give a recap of a little bit of the architecture of email that we studied earlier. So SMTP protocol is used by the message transfer agents to relay messages from the originator to the recipient. The first and second stages, namely email submission and the mail transfer phase of email delivery, uses SMTP. Now imagine that if you are the sender and you are sending an email to the receiver, so you have your user agent situated with, and this user agent composes the email and prepares the email for transmission, and then it hands it over to the SMTP protocol. The SMTP protocol is actually, you can see there are two times. The first time is between your sender's client and the sender's mail server, and the second one is between the sender's mail server and the receiver's mail server. So first time and second time. SMTP protocol is not used for the final phase of the email because it is not a pull protocol. SMTP is like a push protocol. So you can say this: SMTP uses commands and responses to transfer the messages between an MTA client and an MTA server. So this is overall how the email is actually transmitted from a particular source to a particular destination. And SMTP protocol is actually used twice. It is used by the MTAs to transfer the mail from one point to another point. Let us see how this is being done. So how does an SMTP work? So SMTP defines a process for exchanging the data between an user agent and a mail server, or as I told you earlier, we say that message transfer agent, and in some cases we call it as a mail server also. There's no big difference between these two words. We can use it interchangeably. And user agent is what a user interacts with. This is the first thing what a user does whenever you want to send an email or read an email. The thing or the one that you interact with is the user agent, which provides you with a view of the mailbox, the computer or web application where they access and send the emails. A mail server is a specialized computer for sending, receiving, and forwarding emails. Users do not interact directly with the mail servers. Of course, the mail servers are actually maintained by your mail, the domains which actually provide you the email addresses, and your user or the user does not have a direct access to the mail server. Now, SMTP is a mail delivery protocol, not a mail retrieval protocol. As I told you, SMTP delivers an email to an email provider's mail server, but separate protocols are used to retrieve that email from the mail server so that the recipient can read it. The first two phases SMTP is used, whereas the final phase, where we call it as also as the final delivery, where the mail is actually delivered to the recipient's device. For that phase, we do not use SMTP. We use protocols such as POP3 or even IMAP for that purpose. That is the reason we say that SMTP is a mail delivery protocol, but not a mail retrieval protocol. Now, after establishing, how does it do? It establishes a TCP connection. After establishing the TCP connection to port 25, the sending machine operating as the client waits for the receiving machine operating as the server to talk first. So once the connection is done, it waits for the server to send an acknowledgement or to send something, to talk first. The server starts by sending a line of text giving its identity and telling whether it is prepared to receive email or not. If it is not, the client releases the connection and tries again later. So once the connection is made, the server initiates it by saying whether it is prepared to receive the email or not. If it says so, if it is ready to receive the email, then the client can start sending it. If it says, no, I'm sorry, I cannot receive any email right now, the client has to terminate the connection and it has to redo it completely. If the server is willing to accept email, the client announces whom the email is coming from and whom it is going to. If such a recipient exists at the destination, the server gives the client the go ahead to send the message. Then the client sends the message and the server acknowledges it. So once, as I said, if the server is willing to accept the email from the client, it says, okay, come on, go ahead. The client will now say, send the message and give the information from whom that email is coming and to whom it is to be delivered. And if the delivery address exists at the destination, the server collects the email and sends an acknowledgement to the client. Here, of all this information, of all this transmission, no checksum is required because we are currently using TCP as the transport layer protocol. TCP is connection oriented. So as TCP provides the reliable byte stream, when all the email has been exchanged in both directions, then the connection is released. This is how actually SMTP works. SMTP client, SMTP server, SMTP client and server. There is a connection that establishes between these two, and then the mail is delivered. And then after the completion of the delivery of the email, the connection will be terminated. Okay. So in the second video, I actually gave a glimpse of this particular email, how it is done with respect to MIME format. Now, similarly, you can see that here, all the messages that are coming from the server are marked as yes, and all the messages that are sent by the client, who is the sender, by C. As I told you, once the connection is established, the server sends a information, or it initiates by saying whether it is ready or not. These are the codes 220, 250, 354. These are all the codes of SMTP server responses. I don't have the entire list here, but if you want, you can just quickly Google SMTP response codes and you'll get all this information. And the commands that are actually used by SMTP, I just brought a few lists here. There are altogether 14 commands and still counting. And I've just brought some of those commands which are used regularly. Okay, so you can see that. So once the server gives the go ahead saying that SMTP service ready, this client sends hello, HELO. And after that, it says, okay, hello. And after that, it says mail from. You can see request to initiate the SMTP action. This is what this HELO stands for. And then mail from tells you that what is the sender's email address. After that, it says 250, okay. Then RCPT2, that is recipient, who is the receiver's address. You can see this Bob at email. Then for this also the server verifies whether this is a valid email address or not, and then it gives a response saying that 250 recipient, okay, okay, fine, go ahead. Then the client starts sending the data. You can see data stands for the body of the message. It says data. Then the server says that, okay, fine, send email, end with dot on a line by itself. You can see towards the end here. Okay, so this is end here. It tells you that this is the end of the email. Okay, now from this is the body of the email, from to once again all the MIME versions, the message ID, the content type. This is exactly the same that we discussed earlier. And towards the end, once the entire body of the message is being sent now, after that it has sent this so that the sender or the server knows that the email has ended. Now it says 250 message accepted. As there is no more email to be sent, you say quit, QIT, quit. You can say quit, terminates the SMTP connection. Once the client requests a quit, the server also sends a request saying that, okay, I'm also closing the connection down, 221. So all these are codes which are sent by the server. So these are the commands. These are some of the SMTP commands that are sent by the client, and the server responds to these commands through a 3-digit numerical codes. As I said, if you have the time, just go to the Google. And this is another example which I brought from Faruzan's textbook, which I thought will give you a better idea. So SMTP commands are sent from the client to the server and consists of a keyword followed by 0 or more arguments. Like this, you can see. See, this is the command. RCPT2 is the command. Next comes the arguments. Like this. Of course, in data, you have all these arguments. Hello, this is the argument, like that. So commands are sent from the client to the server and consist of a keyword followed by 0 or more arguments. SMTP responses are sent from the server to the client. A response is a 3-digit code that may be followed by the additional textual information. You can see this. See, first the server sends 220 service ready. Then the client sends hello, whether you are there or not, whether the connection is being established or not. After it is successfully done, the server sends okay, fine. After this, the client starts sending the envelope. So mail from whom this email is being sent, fine, receive. Then to whom this email is going to be delivered. All these are our clients. You can see the server, what it does is it is just giving you a response in 3-digit codes, and there's a small text description also. Then follows the header. The envelope is done. Next comes the header with the data from, to, date, subject, all those starts. And then we have a blank line followed by the body and a dot. A single dot is being sent here by the client, which tells the server that the mail is completed. It finds the server acknowledges 250 OK. As there is no more email to send, the client will say quit, and then it is closed. If you if you observe carefully, you can see that this entire process of transferring email from one point to another point, or from client to server, is actually done in 3 steps. The first one is the connection establishment phase, where the client and the server transmit their messages and first establish a connection. After the connection establishment phase, then follows the data transfer phase, where the actual email is being transmitted. And finally, we have the connection termination phase, where if all the email is completed, then the server and the client now will start closing the connection down, because there is no more to send. So these are the 3 phases in SMTP message transfer. What are the limitations? SMTP in its basic form is very simple and can be implemented easily, but there are some certain limitations with the original SMTP standard. The first one being, it does not include any authentication. Once it does not have any authentication, there is a huge scope for junk and these spam messages or spam emails. The second limitation is it only transfers ASCII messages. It does not transfer binary data. And for that reason, we use the base 64 MIME transfer encoding scheme, or the content transfer encoding scheme, which we explained in the last video. So for that, of course, though it's okay, for larger messages, there is a overhead of 25%. So utilizing the base 64 MIME encoding scheme is not efficient when you want to transmit larger emails. It makes it inefficient. Okay. The third limitation, the SMTP always sends the messages in clear picture or in the clear format. There is no encryption used, and automatically there is no privacy that you can provide to the message. You cannot protect your message from an unauthorized third party watching it. So these are some of the primary limitations of SMTP protocol. In order to overcome these and to provide more functionality, there are some revisions or extensions that are proposed to the original SMTP protocol. So to allow these and many other problems related to message processing to be addressed, SMTP was revised to have an extension mechanism as per the RFC 5321 standard, and is now called the extended SMTP. So now we have a new name given to it as ESMTP, which is nothing but extended SMTP. If you are wondering what is this, there is nothing more. We added some few extension headers or extension commands. So using those commands, we have increased the capabilities of SMTP. Okay. So a client SMTP supporting the SMTP service extensions should start an SMTP session by issuing the extended hello command. EHLO stands for extended hello instead of the normal HELO command. So of course, if it sends EHLO and if it is successful, the server also accepts it, then it gives a code 250. If the server does not accept it on failure, the server SMTP responds with the code 550. If there is a case of an error, the server SMTP responds with one of the codes 500, 501, 502, 504, or 421. Maybe service unavailable or like registered command, like those kind of things. These are all the error codes. Okay. So if the server rejects, the server is a regular SMTP server and the client should proceed in the usual way. If the EHLO is accepted, the server replies with the extensions that it supports. The client may then use any of these extensions. That means if I want to use an extended SMTP, first I have to send EHLO or extended hello command to my server. If the server supports these extensions or whatever extensions the server supports, if it's okay with it, then it will give me an acceptance with the commands that it supports. So SMTP service extensions can be used for both message submission or the mail submission and also the mail transfer operations for both parts, for point number 1 and point number 2. And to have, if you want to have better knowledge on how the ESMTP works and what are all the parameters that are added, you can go and visit this website iana.org, which I actually gathered some information from, which I found to be very useful. Okay. Now, to give a better understanding of how ESMTP works, let me explain a few of the common service extensions or for the common SMTP service extensions, which are primarily used. The first extension is the authentication. This extension actually allows an SMTP client to authenticate itself to a server using a variety of authentication mechanisms. Any different types of authentication mechanisms can be used by the client to authenticate itself, to prove its identity to the server. That is the first extension, auth, or in other words, authentication. The second one is something called as binary mine. This allows an SMTP client and server to transmit binary data in the body of the message using the MIME format that we discussed earlier. The third one is chunking. Chunking means if you are having a large message, so you can break up a large message into chunks and transmit the chunks individually rather than trying to transmit this large message at a single time. That is what we call it as chunking. Next comes size. This allows the SMTP client to indicate the size of a message to a server before even transmitting it. What is the purpose and what is the use for this? The server, based on the size of the email, can then decide whether to accept it or reject it. Next comes the start TLS, or the transport layer security. This is very important in case of encryption. So an SMTP client and server can negotiate the use of a secure connection using TLS. Once during the connection establishment phase, they can do the negotiation using of the TLS parameters and what could be used and how could it be encrypted. The last one is an 8-bit MIME, or the 8-bit MIME transport, which allows an SMTP client and server to transmit an 8-bit data in the body of the message rather than the regular 7-bit data fall allowed by the SMTP. Of course, these are only few of the SMTP service extensions. There are many others like the DSN extension, delivery status notification, or enhanced status codes, where the server can send more detailed information of an error that has happened. And pipelining also. Pipelining does allows a client to send multiple commands rather than waiting for a response for each command and then following it up with another command. So these are all the different uh, service extensions that have been added to SMTP. Now, if you ask me what happens when you add all these things, there are some certain advantages of adding all these extensions to the basic SMTP protocol. The first advantage is being the improved functionality, because you are adding the capabilities of sending binary data, authenticating the message, even tracking your message, notification of delivery status, prioritizing message delivery. Of course, there are many other things, many other capabilities that are now added. So improved functionality, better error handling, all these things are there. That is the first advantage, improved functionality of the email delivery. The second one is your better error handling, because as I told you, there is the extension which we call it as enhanced security, enhanced status codes, which will actually provide or make the server to provide a detailed description of the error that just happened. Then it becomes much more easier to troubleshoot and also debug faster. So better error handling capabilities are there now. And the third one is enhanced security. SMTP is very weak in security because it does not have any authentication or even encryption attached to it. But with this ESMTP, you are implementing TLS and also authentication mechanisms where the client can authenticate itself to the server, and also now your message is safeguarded with encryption, providing confidentiality. The last one, see, we discussed a lot of other extensions like chunking, pipelining, where you can now send a large message into small pieces and then send these pieces one after the another, and combine them toward at the receiver's part. And also with pipelining, you can send multiple commands rather than just waiting for each command, the response for each command. All this put together is now providing you a better, or it now enhances the overall performance of the system, overall performance of the SMTP protocol. So these are some of the advantages of going for SMTP with extensions over your basic SMTP protocol. So this is how the messages are being handled by SMTP or during the message transfer phase or the mail transfer phase. So this is to do with moving of email or transfer of email from the source point to the destination machine. So with that, we'll stop here. And in the next video, I will discuss about the last part of the email, which is the final delivery. And the protocols that are used for final delivery are POP3 and IMAP. Till then, take care and good luck.